The cashier watched the man search his phone for a $2 coupon. His gray hoodie was faded. His baseball cap looked older than some of the employees working around him. In his basket were three ordinary things: a bottle of drain cleaner, a pack of light bulbs, and a roll of duct tape. Nothing about him demanded attention, nothing suggested power, and nobody in that hardware store knew that less than 60 seconds earlier, the man's phone had displayed a number most people could not imagine earning in 100 lifetimes: $800 million. He could have purchased the entire shopping center. He could have bought every house within several miles. He could have walked outside, called an assistant, and had a private jet waiting before sunset. Instead, he stood beneath fluorescent lights and waited patiently for a $2 discount. But the strangest part was not that nobody recognized him. The strangest part was that he had worked for decades to keep it that way. His name was Daniel Mercer. Every morning at 6:17, Daniel left the same modest house on a quiet suburban street. He drove an 11-year-old Honda with a cracked cup holder and a stain on the passenger seat. He stopped at the same cafe, ordered the same small black coffee, and usually sat alone near the window. The waitress believed he managed a warehouse. His neighbor thought he owned 2 laundromats. The man who serviced his air conditioner assumed Daniel had retired from construction. None of them knew the truth. Daniel controlled a network of companies, properties, parking facilities, warehouses, cleaning operations, storage businesses, and commercial investments worth more than $800 million. Yet he lived like someone who still remembered what it felt like to count coins before entering a grocery store. Because Daniel had learned that poverty does not leave a person the moment money arrives. Sometimes it follows them quietly. It hides inside their habits, their fears, their relationships, and their inability to believe that tomorrow will be safe. Daniel did not grow up dreaming of becoming a billionaire. As a child, he dreamed of opening the refrigerator without feeling afraid. He grew up in a small apartment where the ceiling leaked whenever it rained. The kitchen floor lifted at the corners. The heating system made loud knocking sounds throughout winter, but rarely produced enough warmth. His mother, Evelyn, kept unpaid bills beneath a chipped fruit bowl. Whenever another envelope arrived, she would stare at it for several seconds before opening it. Daniel learned to recognize the colors. White meant rent, blue meant electricity, pink meant they were already late. His father left when Daniel was 9. There was no dramatic argument, no broken furniture, no final speech. One evening, his father packed 2 bags, closed the apartment door, and disappeared from their lives. For months, Daniel expected him to return. Every time footsteps stopped outside the apartment, he looked toward the door. Eventually, he stopped looking. Evelyn worked mornings in a school cafeteria and cleaned offices at night. She often returned after midnight smelling of bleach, dust, and industrial soap. Her hands became so dry that the skin around her fingers cracked. Some nights, Daniel would wake and find her asleep at the kitchen table, still wearing her cleaning uniform with an unopened bill beside her head. But every morning she made breakfast, and whenever Daniel complained about what they did not have, she reminded him of one thing: having less was not permission to become less. At 13, Daniel began helping her clean offices on weekends. While other children slept, he emptied wastebaskets beneath the desks of lawyers, executives, and business owners. He saw expensive watches resting beside keyboards, framed university degrees, photographs of beaches, ski resorts, and houses with swimming pools. At first, he believed wealthy people lived without fear. Then he began noticing the papers left on their desks: loan applications, overdue invoices, angry legal letters. Businesses that looked successful from the outside but were struggling underneath. And after midnight, when the hallways were silent, all those impressive offices needed the same simple things: clean floors, working lights, empty trash cans. Daniel did not have the language to explain what he was learning. He only understood that status could disappear. Need did not. At 19, Daniel worked in a distribution warehouse during the day and attended community college at night. He loaded boxes until his back hurt. Most evenings, he ate from a vending machine because the cafeteria was already closed. Then one week, the machine stopped working. Employees complained constantly. They kicked the side panel. They taped handwritten signs to the glass. For 3 days, nobody could buy a drink or snack. Then a man arrived in an old van. He opened the machine, replaced a small part, collected the cash, and left 20 minutes later. Nobody asked his name. Nobody admired him. Nobody called him successful. But Daniel could not stop thinking about the machine. It stood in the corner all day, serving hundreds of people, earning money one small purchase at a time. Daniel found the owner's phone number and called him. The man refused to explain the business. Daniel called again, then again. Eventually, the owner agreed to meet him at a roadside diner. He told Daniel that an old machine was available for $900. Daniel had $412 saved. He sold his television. He worked 3 extra weekends, and then he did something he hated. He asked his mother for help. Evelyn listened quietly. She disappeared into her bedroom and returned with an envelope containing $200. It was almost everything she had saved. Daniel told her he could not accept it. She placed the envelope in his hand and said she did not understand vending machines, but she understood him. Daniel bought the machine and placed it inside a small auto repair shop. During the first month, it earned $87 after supplies, repairs, and fuel. $87, less than Daniel earned during one warehouse shift. Most people would have called it a failure. Daniel saw proof. For the first time, something he owned had earned money while he was somewhere else. That machine had worked while he slept. It had worked while he studied. It had worked while he helped his mother clean offices. The amount was small. The lesson was enormous. Daniel purchased another machine, then another. He learned which products expired, which locations produced steady sales, which business owners kept their promises, which machines looked profitable but consumed money through repairs. He recorded everything in cheap notebooks, every sale, every fuel expense, every broken coin mechanism, every mistake. At 26, he owned 43 machines. At 30, he owned more than 100. Yet he continued working at the warehouse. He still brought lunch from home. He still wore the same boots until the soles became thin. His coworkers purchased new cars. Daniel purchased used machines. His friends moved into larger apartments. Daniel rented storage space. People asked why he never enjoyed his money. Daniel would smile and say he was trying to build a little freedom. What he did not say was that freedom still felt dangerously far away. Because ambition built from fear does not know when to stop. Daniel missed birthdays. He canceled dinners. He checked sales reports during conversations. The woman he planned to marry never asked him for a mansion. She never asked for jewelry. She asked him to turn off his phone. She wanted him to sit through one complete dinner without leaving to repair a machine. Daniel always promised he would slow down after the next purchase, after the next contract, after the next year. Then one evening, he returned home and found half the closet empty. On the kitchen counter was a short note. It said he was building a life he never stopped long enough to live. Daniel read that sentence repeatedly. He wanted to be angry. Instead, he sat alone in the dark because he knew she was right. He had escaped the apartment with the leaking ceiling, but the frightened child who lived there had escaped with him. No amount of money felt permanent. No level of success felt safe. Every opportunity seemed like the final chance before everything disappeared. So Daniel kept building. Not because he needed more, because he did not know how to believe that he finally had enough. At 34, Daniel entered a failing laundromat to collect money from one of his vending machines. Half the fluorescent lights were broken. Several washing machines had handwritten "out of order" signs. The plastic chairs were cracked. The owner, Mr. Alvarez, was 71. His wife was seriously ill, and his children lived in other states. He wanted to sell. Several buyers had already walked away. They disliked the neighborhood. They disliked the aging equipment. They disliked the thin profit margins. Daniel stood near the entrance and watched customers carrying heavy bags of clothing through the rain. Most lived in nearby apartments without washing machines. Some had small children with them. A few waited outside because there were not enough seats. Other buyers saw an unattractive business. Daniel saw a need that would still exist tomorrow. He used nearly all his savings and a small bank loan to purchase the laundromat. For the first 6 months, almost everything went wrong. 2 machines flooded the floor. A pipe burst behind the dryers. Someone broke into the change machine. An electrical problem forced him to close for 3 days. Daniel slept in the office twice because he could not afford emergency repairs and security at the same time. One evening, standing in ankle-deep water, he wondered whether he had destroyed everything he had built. But he did not hide from the numbers. He studied them. He replaced machines slowly instead of renovating everything at once. He installed brighter lights, added folding tables, repaired the restroom, created a safe corner where children could sit while their parents washed clothes. He hired a local woman named Rosa to manage the store and gave her the authority to solve customer problems without calling him. Within 18 months, revenue nearly doubled. But the moment Daniel remembered most was not found on a financial statement. It happened late one winter evening. A mother entered with 2 children and several bags of laundry. She looked exhausted. The other fell asleep beside a basket of warm clothes. The mother thanked Rosa for keeping the laundromat clean and safe. Daniel was standing near the back, unnoticed. He suddenly understood that profit was not created only by increasing prices. Sometimes it was created by treating people with dignity in places where they had stopped expecting it. That laundromat led to another, then 3 more, then cleaning companies, parking facilities, small warehouses, storage businesses, commercial properties and neighborhoods larger investors ignored. Daniel did not chase businesses that made him sound intelligent. He chose businesses people needed even when the economy was difficult. Clean clothing, safe storage, maintained buildings, places to park, spaces where ordinary companies could operate. The less exciting a business sounded at a dinner party, the more interested Daniel became. But just as his life began to feel stable, the one person he wanted to share it with became seriously ill. Evelyn had spent years ignoring pain because medical treatment was expensive. By the time doctors discovered the problem, there were fewer options than Daniel's money could create. For the first time, he could afford everything: specialists, a private room, the best treatment available. But wealth had finally met something it could not negotiate with. One evening, Evelyn asked how the businesses were doing. Daniel told her they were fine. She smiled weakly. She said he always used the word fine when he was hiding something. Daniel almost told her everything: the properties, the companies, the millions. But before he could speak, she asked him to make a promise. She told him not to spend his entire life proving that he had escaped being poor. Daniel looked at her hand. It was the same hand that had once placed $200 inside an envelope. Then she told him the sentence that would shape the rest of his life: money should make you kinder, not louder. Evelyn died 3 weeks later. At her funeral, people approached Daniel and shared small stories about her. A cafeteria worker remembered Evelyn secretly paying for a child's lunch. A former neighbor remembered her bringing soup during an illness. A cleaner remembered Evelyn completing someone else's work so they could visit a sick parent. None of those people knew Daniel was already wealthy. Their words were not designed to impress him. Their hugs were not requests. Their kindness had nothing to do with his bank account. Standing beside his mother's grave, Daniel understood why he wanted his wealth to remain private. He did not want every relationship to become a calculation. He wanted to know who would respect him when they believed he had nothing to offer. From that point forward, Daniel built differently. He hired capable managers, shared profits with employees, and bought businesses people would still need during difficult years. By 50, his companies operated across 7 states, and his net worth had crossed $100 million. Years later, it passed $500 million. Yet Daniel remained in an ordinary neighborhood. He traveled comfortably and paid for quality, but he never used expensive things to prove his worth. He had watched people appear successful while drowning in bills. He knew luxury could reveal wealth. It could also hide insecurity. At networking events, people often underestimated him. Daniel never corrected them. He had learned that people revealed their character when they believed he had nothing to offer. One evening, a young entrepreneur spent 15 minutes describing his luxury car, designer office, and enormous online following. Daniel said he owned a few ordinary businesses. The entrepreneur quickly lost interest. Months later, Daniel's team reviewed his company. The presentation was impressive, but the business depended entirely on publicity. Daniel declined the investment. Daniel's privacy became more complicated when his childhood friend Marcus wanted to open a bookstore and cafe. Marcus asked him for $60,000. Daniel could have transferred it without noticing. Instead, he said no. Marcus accused him of forgetting where they came from. Daniel told him he believed in him too much to make failure painless. Later, Daniel offered him something more valuable than easy money: time. Every Saturday, they studied rent, payroll, inventory, margins, and everything that could go wrong. They tested the idea at a weekend market. Marcus changed the plan, saved $12,000, and built loyal customers. Only then did Daniel invest. Years later, the cafe employed 14 people. Marcus asked why Daniel had made the process so difficult. Daniel told him money could open a door, but it could not prepare someone for what walked through it. Then came a cold Tuesday morning. Daniel's kitchen sink stopped draining. Instead of calling an assistant, he drove to the hardware store himself. He wore a faded gray hoodie and the navy cap his mother had given him. In the plumbing aisle, he compared 2 bottles of drain cleaner. One cost $8, the other cost $14. Then his phone vibrated. A major property transaction had closed. His updated portfolio value was $800,218,400. Daniel stared at the number. Instead of feeling powerful, he remembered $412, the amount he had saved before buying his first vending machine. He remembered his mother's envelope, the offices he cleaned after midnight, the flooded laundromat, and his mother's request that money make him kinder, not louder. $800 million was not one victory. It was thousands of ordinary decisions made when nobody was watching. Daniel placed the $8 bottle in his basket. At checkout, the cashier watched him search for a $2 coupon. Behind it was an account summary showing more money than she could imagine. But all she saw was an older man trying to save $2. Daniel thanked her, carried his bag outside, and placed it on the stained passenger seat of his old Honda. He did not hide his wealth so he could hoard it. He hid his name so generosity would not become a performance. Through attorneys and foundations, he paid medical bills, funded scholarships, supported single parents, and kept rents affordable in the building where he had grown up. Families received help without learning who provided it. Daniel never filmed their gratitude. He remembered how vulnerable it felt to need assistance. You may never possess $800 million. That is not the lesson. The most valuable parts of life are often invisible. Discipline, patience, mistakes studied instead of hidden, and people helped without recognition. Real wealth is not making strangers envy you. It is controlling your time, protecting your peace, and helping someone without needing them to remember your name. Daniel Mercer had more than $800 million, but his greatest success was not the number on his phone. The frightened child inside him no longer controlled every decision. After spending most of his life building freedom, Daniel had finally learned how to live inside it.